How's it going, guys? Travis and Ashton here from Tackle Bros, and today we're going to break down our pretty awesome weekend. Well, my awesome weekend, your awesome Sunday.
Great Sunday.
About the couple derbies that we were in that we were actually able to win. So we're going to kind of break down what went on. Now, we didn't film these tournaments mostly because of weather. So on the Saturday tournament that I did with Eagle, we had rain literally all day, and then we had crazy amount of wind. And then the one that me and you did, we had an extreme amount of wind. Like, you would have not been able to hear a single word we said. I just don't want to put out videos like that. I like explaining stuff as they kind of happen a little bit more. So we opted not to film. Pretty thankful we did. I couldn't hear Ashton talk. He couldn't hear me talk, and we were right beside each other. That's how windy it was, and you had to be in the wind to catch them. So I'm going to start off with the Saturday tournament that you were not there for. So I fished a Saturday tournament with Warren, a.k.a. the Eagle. He's a very close friend of mine. You guys have seen him in the Thousand Island Open video that we did. He works for Daiwa, works for Garmin, works for Under Armour, Pradco. Jack of all trades. Guy is he's a weapon and a great fisherman. So on Saturday, we went to a little lake in the Kawarthas here called Crowe Lake. It's basically a river into a big bowl, a couple islands in it, not a whole lot going on. It's one of the, in my opinion, it's a phenomenal walleye fishery and a great smallmouth bass fishery. There's also lots of largemouth, and you could spend a day in the river flipping and not even hit half the stuff. So it's a pretty cool little lake. Now, it was going to fish weird just based on the wind. We spent a lot of time out there, so I kind of know the areas in any situation. So we go out, we have 15 pounds really quick on the drop shot, just throwing stuff like hasdongs, robo worms, the regular drop shot stuff. We kind of go through the day doing more of the same. A lot of 3-pounders, a lot of 2-pounders. Every once in a while we get 3.5, and just kind of built our bag up. And then finally at the end of the day, now this is a lake in the Kawarthas that kind of defies most of the Kawartha fishing, in my opinion. A lot of the Kawarthas is either you're flipping stuff or you're dragging very slowly. This one it's great if you're throwing a jerkbait. Drop shot works there, obviously, but the jig head minnow, the mid-strolling baits, they chase this thing down like crazy out there. So we go back to the area that we started in, locate this massive, it was the biggest pod of 4-pound plus smallmouth I've ever seen in my life. He fires out some jig head minnows. This is a Ray Japan fish roller, probably the best mid-strolling bait of all time, and gets them to kind of break up. He catches a giant 4-pound 2-ounce, which is a big fish for that little lake. And we basically called out all of our fish we had worked for all day in the last hour on this one little group of fish. It was crazy throwing back 4+ pounders, just like they were not. I've never fished anything quite like that. I know fish are starting to group up now, but they don't act like that here, really.
Not really.
Like mid-strolling, listen, it works, but I've never seen them come 8 out of 18 foot of water and just shoot right to the surface after something quite like I had there in the Kawarthas. It was awesome. They were kind of like they were grouped up like they were
Pelagic fish.
Yeah, like pelagic fish, but they're sitting on bottom, 18 foot of water. It was a weird scene, but I learned a lot from it. We ended up weighing 17 pounds, 12 ounces for 4 fish. I believe second place was right around 14 pounds. Our buddy Matty J had big fish with a little over 4.5 pounds. So it was an overall good tournament. I think there was only like a dozen boats, handful of boats. So just a little fun one, warm up on a Saturday, although it was very cold and very rainy. You basically take your rain jacket off and you'd look to the left and there'd be a cloud coming in this way with rain. So you put it back on, you take it off, you'd look forward and there'd be one coming right at you again. So on and off rain all day, pretty miserable, great fishing. And that is kind of my thing. When it's miserable out, I fish great. So Sunday, we had a tournament on Rice Lake. The Shootout Fishing League. It's one of the bigger leagues here. It's like Shootout, CSFL, Bait Fuel Tour, kind of the 3 big ones.
That's it.
Yeah. They all have classics. They all do a ton of events in the Cortes. They do them all over the place. So we had actually registered for this one in June. It got canceled due to weather. I think there was like a crazy thunderstorm on the day. So this was the makeup date. Look at who's in it. I'm thinking we're going to need a monster bag. We got guys like Dan Miguel from Great Lakes Finesse. We got Bobby Belmonte, who used to work at the store, spends a ton of time out there with his guide service. We got Tim Fernandez, Gerard. We a ton of great guys that do really well in the Corte fisheries and just anywhere they go, really. So we're thinking we're going to need probably 24.5 pounds to win. That was in our brain. That's kind of what we needed to do. So we get to our first spot at about 7:30 in the morning. We were second flight out, boat number 35. We kind of mosey around for about an hour. Ash hooks up with a 480, so 4 3/4 pounder on a Juvy Craw. So we're fishing against Dan Miguel with his own bait here, which was pretty cool. It started to set things in motion. I lose one about the same size, I would say. Yeah, similar size. And then we catch a 1 pounder, a 2 pounder, and then we decide it's time to go. So we roll up on the second spot. I cast out, second cast on the Juvy. I catch a 6 pounder, about 10 feet out in front of the boat, comes up, boils for a second. We're in about 14 feet of water.
I'd say so.
Yeah, about 14 foot of water. Boils, nets it. We're hyped up in the box. So now we have our 5 for about 13 pounds. Go to another little hard spot around the same depth, and I get a 5 pounder on the same bait. So we're thinking it's gonna be a great day. I love dragging a tube, man. It's just something simple about tube fishing that you don't need to overcomplicate anything. You just need to get good bottom contact and just be patient. And usually you got, you're on spinning, but you're throwing, instead of 13-pound main line, you're throwing 18-pound. Instead of 7-pound fluorocarbon, you're throwing 10-pound fluorocarbon. So you have a little bit of extra confidence when you're using a little bit more of a stout hook and dragging bottom, which is awesome. From there, we start spot hopping, and that's something that's really big on Rice Lake, and that's a big reason why I think we were able to do so well. A lot of guys weren't able to move around as freely because of the wind. It was blowing 50, 60 kilometers an hour. I don't know what that is in miles an hour, but it was really, really windy. But this boat is literally incredible in big water. We spent a lot of time on Lake Ontario, which, that also probably helped us with the wind, because that's a pretty average day out there with like 1 to 4 foot rollers. Yeah, that's pretty standard for Lake Ontario. This boat is, I cannot praise it enough. It allowed us to move around freely, stay on spots easily. Power pole move, man. I was on the fence about it at the start. I'll probably never have a different trolling motor as long as they make this thing. It is powerful, it's quiet, the spot lock is awesome. Anyways, it's not about that. We get to our third spot. This is a bigger boulder pile. So Ashton's gonna keep throwing the tube. I go over to drop shot. I start throwing the dual Realis Versa Pintail. This lake, a lot of guys will throw stuff like little minnow baits. The Versa Pintail is just something a little bit different. Has a very erratic tail, so it's constantly moving. It's just something a little different. And in white, I have a lot of confidence in white baits. I don't know where it stems from. Maybe a dozen years ago on Bay of Quinte, I started throwing white baits out there a lot, and it's just kind of stayed with me. I throw them everywhere I go. I catch them on white everywhere I go. But yeah, so I started throwing the Versa Pintail. I hook a 3.5 pounder very awkwardly. Probably our longest fish to get in the boat. Is like a 4-minute fight. We were in the middle of the lake. There's wind blowing right on us directly. The boat is, we're struggling basically. So I've hooked it weird. I got to spin around. Anyways, we get in the boat. Ashton nets it. Very happy about that. Stick around for another half hour trying to get another one to go. Nothing would eat. They do that sometimes out there as well. Sometimes you can get multiple to go, but a lot of times for me, if I can't go here, and get one, I never seem to do well. If I'm relying on one area to get all my fish, I end up with 14 pounds. If I can move around a little bit, I can get into the 20s.
Oh, yeah.
So we go to another spot. Ash starts throwing around the football jig. This is another good bait out there. It's another good bait this time of year, period. This is a Raid one. I think you were using the K-Tech one with a little OSP Doe Live Beaver on it. Phenomenal combo. You catch a Doe Live Craw, thank you. You catch a couple 2-pounders, And then I do something that I've done it, but I've never had a lot of success on it. And I go back to the fish roller, except I nose hook drop shot this. Now, this is not something, like I said, I've never had a lot of success doing this. I've caught fish doing it for sure, but for me, generally always a mid-strolling bait, but I went based on the color. So a lot of the bait that they're eating there is perch. This is kind of perchy. So a nose hook drop shot this thing, first cast, 4.5 pounder, comes up and then just kind of lies on its side, mouth open, scoops it up. And I'm like, okay, we got a good bag. We got a good chance here. We run around for the rest of the day, you know, catch a lot of 3 pounders, 2 pounders, stuff like that, but can never really get anything else to go. But we knew we had around 22 to 23 pounds somewhere in there. Going to weigh in, and it turns out that because of the wind, a lot of guys were blown off their stuff. And that was I think the key to our success here was we were able to stay and get to areas that a lot of other people weren't able to get on. We ended up winning the event, 23.45 for smallmouth. We also won big fish with a 609 smallie, which is one of my biggest out there again. That fish was incredible. It's so long. It's so different from the Lake Ontario fish we've been catching a lot this year. Long and still fat. Those Lake Ontario fish are short and like super football-y. And yeah, it was a phenomenal time. Weather was terrible. I was beat afterwards. Dan Miguel, who I assume would do well, ended up in second place with 22.5 pounds. And then my good friend Tim and Gerard end up coming in third with 20.5 pounds. So we end up having a phenomenal day. It's a lake that I really wanted to win a big tournament on. I won one earlier this year on Rice Lake with, like, again, I think there was like 15, 20 boats in it, but I wanted to win something a little bit more substantial. I spent a ton of time out there, and it's just my home lake. You always want to win on your home lake. There's nothing better than doing that. I mean, we've had success a lot of other places, but on Rice Lake, there's so many good anglers in the Kawarthas that just have it so dialed in. I mean, it gets one on largemouth a couple times a year, which is crazy with the caliber of smallmouth in there. But yeah, that was basically our day. That's kind of what we caught them on. Just key little hard spot areas, man, that are, you guys spent a lot of time out there to find. So thanks for watching, guys. Sorry we didn't get to film the video, and hopefully we gave you a little bit of insight into kind of what's going on in the Kawarthas right now.
Also have no voice.
He has no voice. That's why he didn't talk. So Ashley's been battling with bronchitis here for the last little bit. He's also on a stool because he's very short. So he's actually not this tall.